Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio, your radio companion to Indiepocalypse, the monthly anthology of games, the radio show that is halfway between your con hangouts and an interview show. I'm Andrew, the host of this said hybrid interview hangout show. We are here with two guests today from the Imaginary Engine Review, the co-editors of the said review. Review being, I think review is a noun used to describe a magazine, right? I'm using that correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Phoenix Sims and Grace Benfellow, how are you both doing today?
Good.
Good. Really excited to be here. I
Glad
had such a great time last time I was on, so I was very excited to be invited again.
Glad to have you back. This is 2024 is a banner year for me specifically of the types of the kind of game writing that I want. Between tier for the shorthanded and bump combat, I'm feasting of people writing about games that I say this politely, games that nobody cares about.
Yes. Yeah.
It's okay. That's literally, that's totally understandable.
That is the intention.
Yes.
To some degree.
No. I use that like as an endearing term. Like, like I am planning my pledge drive, and I was like, I should do a movie night again, and and last time I did Wavelength, and I'm thinking of doing Man with a Movie Camera, and both of those are movies that like nobody cares about when you think of it in the context of like what gaming culture is, you know?
Right. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like Man with a Movie Camera is like low key one of the most influential films ever made, maybe. Right. But also.
Go ahead.
It is very much the kind of movie that maybe you watch in film school.
Right.
Like if you don't watch Battleship Potemkin or something else instead.
Yeah. And gaming culture doesn't have those yet, I don't think, in the same way.
No, yeah.
I feel like people are... Tower Drog is getting closer to it sometimes, I think.
Ooh,
where people are starting to think of they're like, oh, this game is kind of rough and kind of intense and like in a extreme experience, but it is also intensely influential and across like the entirety of gaming.
Yeah, that also has an anime.
Yes, right, and a PS2 one. And
oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, weird.
It has, right. It is one of those kind of like the veggies of video games. I feel like we need more of, and I think tier is going to help show people where their video game veggies are so they can eat them occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of
like
like
Flintstones vitamins of.
Right.
I don't know if that's the right way to put it. But
I know. Like no one's like
veggies makes more sense.
No one is really like a movie night, and they're gonna like break out Tarkovsky for movie night or whatever. but there's like people go, oh, but it is good.
Yeah.
In the same way, right? There are plenty of games where you're like, hey, we're gonna bring out our friends. We're all gonna play Hide Lied. It's like probably not, but it's nice to know about it. But for all this aside, we've mentioned I've even shortened it. But if people are unfamiliar, what is the Imaginary Engine Review?
So basically, we stole our format from Bullet Points. So it's a monthly digital magazine where we cover a single game or maybe like a themed group, like games from a single developer or something, in 1 month, and commission right now just one writer to write a critical essay on it, and then we both usually contribute as well. And that's basically it. We have like Danes and ambitions, but so far we're trying to keep it real simple so we can sustain it for a long time.
No, you say that as much like on your about, and I think about it. Got me really thinking about like it's so much better I think to just be sustainable than to be I don't know, big. or
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, yeah. I definitely feel like that's like a particularly important point for both of us, is that there's there yeah, especially right now, there's not a lot of sustainability
right.
in games writing, and it sucks because like there's some really amazing game writing out there.
Mhm.
But every time I've seen in the past while, things get swallowed up into big conglomerates, or just an indie publication goes under. It's just really sad because it's like these are all passion projects for people, and um, yeah, I don't know. I just sustainability is definitely the thing, because it
Yeah.
would be nice to um, I don't know, I love being able to support these voices that are coming out, that they have such a unique perspective on games, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
they don't get to be heard as much
Yeah,
sometimes.
I think it is really hard because I mean we were just joking about people don't care about the games that we cover, and but it's also people don't really care about games crit
Right.
generally. Like I think that it is like in the way that if someone is into movies,
Yeah.
um, they probably have read some Ebert, or I don't know who the equivalent is now. I guess there really isn't one.
Right.
But like,
I think we're also seeing the death knell of criticism across all.
oh yeah, no,
I-
it's in decline to be clear. But it is like I think Letterboxd itself is like, hey, if I'm not reading criticism from like in a newspaper or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I'm at least reading stuff that my friends say about stuff,
Yeah.
And like you have these little sub. I mean, video games have this too with stuff like backlogged and things, which I think Bump Combat came out of to some degree.
I think a lot of them are on there and probably are still
Yeah.
on there.
So it's not as if these spaces don't exist, but just that it is like hard, I think, for people to get engaged with criticism kind of for its own sake.
Because like things like Backlogged and Letterboxd also are like social media sites, which I think
Yes.
if you want to get attention will trend probably towards more like this happened to my buddy Eric more than like more than a 6,000 word essay about a movie.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, Letterboxd has like a shitpost economy.
Yeah.
That I don't quite understand. Like, I feel like shitpost cloud on Twitter could maybe get you some money or something.
Yes.
At some point, and on Letterboxd, that's just not the case. I think so. I don't know why people are chasing cloud on there, but good for them, I guess.
I've become increasingly skeptical of like the clout chasing and like the platform building in general. And like especially as like a means to like promote a different creative endeavor, because I'm like, what percentage of people are going to follow you to that if they came to you because you just post too much?
No, I think that's a legitimate like question, and so I think one of the things is that like when we're making tier, it's like we want this space to exist, and we want it to continue to exist for a long time. Even if like our readership is not large, although of course, like I mean, in long term, although it might be a little tricky because I'm based in the U.S. and Phoenix is based in Canada. And I don't want to be the sole owner and proprietor. I really would like this. Like right now, I am. Like literally everything's in my name.
Right.
And I'm frustrated by that and would like that to change. But long term, we'd like to be like a literary nonprofit, because that's sort of the styling of it a little bit, is kind of as like a journal, right, as opposed to a website, although they're kind of similar.
Right,
things.
But I think there's an intent difference, because I feel like websites are like, I mean, as we see increasingly, more ephemeral than we thought they were.
For sure.
And there's like an intent with like saying, being a journal that's like, okay, no, it's not just about my first, like the very first article we write will always be as important as the last one we ever wrote,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I agree.
For sure.
Like we want people, the issue style is you want people to always like be able to easily, click in like, okay, I want to check, this or that issue, and not just be like, okay, what is
Yeah.
your
Yes.
opinion of whatever the latest game is?
Right, for sure. Weren't even like wanting to, not so much like, because we've seen sort of the rise and I guess kind of fall a little bit of like personality based kind of games coverage,
Right.
like kind of the giant bomb model.
Yes.
Right.
They've kind of got just consumed by.
Yeah, well, and then like a bunch of those people. I mean, no shade to anyone who left or people who are still at Giant Bomb right now, but like, a lot of those people left and then found their own little pockets,
Right.
of coverage, right? Which is
and-
kind of a different environment, I think.
Right,
than-
and
yeah.
it's weird also to see like both in this specific situation, both the people who are there and the people who have left. Like there's a flattening of personality into what I will call, I guess, influencer.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Like there's less show style stuff. There was feels like, if you're an old person like I am, and you're like, oh yeah, you see the trail between like on the spot to like what Giant Bomb does and like talk show style, like
Yeah, totally. Mhm.
presentational work and like people putting on like shows in the TV sense, and now it's kind of between a mixture of remoteness, people not paying you for studio space.
Yeah. Well, like what? Why would you?
Right.
Like I'm not even like. Of course, I would love for
Yes.
that because I love the old Giant Bomb Studio stuff. Right. Like it's so much fun. But like it is like I totally understand why you just don't do that.
Right. It's why
Right.
like I never begrudge games writing going independent and then just also being SEO, like recreating the thing you came from, because like, well, you want to make money and that's what people need.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's a tricky thing, tricky balance.
Like if you want
yeah,
to
for sure.
if you want to break from that cycle, you have to be like, well, I guess I'm gonna have another job.
Right.
Mm,
Yeah.
That's
Which
Yeah.
it's a beneficial mentality to have, but it's like also you don't wish that mentality to have. Of people like, yeah, no, just have another job and do a whole other job on the side for like 5 years.
Yeah, and then maybe you can. Well, I think that is like one of the things about doing tier now when I'm 30 as
Yes.
opposed to like when I'm 25
Mhm.
is like feeling out like, okay, like, and I think we're still learning how to do this a little bit, and we're still really
Yeah.
early
Yeah,
in this process, but like figuring out like, hey, what is like the amount of work we can do, and like literally like every
Yeah.
week I will have like some newfangled bonkers idea of like something we could do, and then I'm like, but I have to like, maybe I'll put it in a note and
Yeah.
then leave it alone,
right.
so it like exits my brain, but I'm not like, oh yeah, we could do all this. Like I have the time and energy. I'm very much like, we have to kind of keep it. And I think we're not making lots of money, but our donation rates have raised since we started, like
Yeah.
pretty steadily. And so we're just hopeful that in like a little bit of time this will be like something that gives us at least a little bit of side income, but also is just like
Like a
continues
sustainable-
forward. Yeah.
Right. Or in some cases, the budget to be able to hire more writers.
Yes. Yeah. hmm
Oh, yeah.
Or we would love to do stuff like, and I guess this is like me pitching
Yes.
to the audience and being like, donate to us. But like, we would love
That's
to
what
do.
you're here for.
Yeah. I'd love to do book reviews.
Yeah.
And kind of do, or like poetry, and do like stake a little bit more space in kind of like art journal kind of thinking.
Right.
And we've talked a little bit about doing a podcast. I don't really know what that would be.
Right.
And but things like that, and I'm just, we're just, or like even having, this is something I'd really like to do, but I don't know, because it would be a lot of extra work, but like having a physical subscription, so we would send you a bean to your door.
Grace, the immediate thing that fired off in my brain, I was like, physical, because I have like issues of broken pencil lying around this room,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
I was just thinking of Broken Pencil.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I was thinking, those are pretty like lightweight, like the bi-monthly sort of thing, or I think they're monthly, but
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
but then like those are pretty lightweight. Like they can't take that much to. I mean, as someone who does produce zines every month, they don't take that much to produce.
Yeah.
So, but it kind of like gets in your brain of like, I could do that. I could do that.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. But we just want to move forward deliberately at every step. I think maybe the next thing we'd like to do is have like a roadmap basically and be like, when we have this amount of money, we can do this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's the pitch on that.
Yeah, so people can be like, because people love to hit goals.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's wild that Patreon got rid of that. Did you two know this? That
Yes,
I didn't know
removed
that,
it's very
feature?
odd.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't understand why they did that.
no, it is like, I mean, I only had one goal ever, which was it was an issue would break even.
Right. Yeah.
But there is like there are other things where it's like, oh yeah, if we have X amount of money, we can do this full time. We can hire writers. We can edit videos. We can do these sorts of different things.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are not
I
like.
should quickly say too, I totally appreciate the support we've gotten so far because it's actually been like just surprising how quick we've found some of our audience as well. And I super appreciate them because I don't know, it's just I'm always happy to have more people to talk about this stuff with because like I don't know, like you said, like sometimes it's I don't know, there's not as many of these platforms, so it's
for sure.
I think the appetite is growing in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a matter of people need to find it. Like the finding is the hard thing right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's always like the trick. Go ahead. No, please keep going.
No, and I was going to say this with all compliments. Tier does not seem easy to market on social media.
No, I mean my brother designed the logo.
Yeah.
And like did some of the and it looks so good and I'm really happy with it. And also because we had like I was big thinking about aesthetics because I was like, video game websites don't care about how they look.
Right.
And they should. And like we want to look like an illuminated manuscript.
Yes.
And like that, I think that was something that was really exciting to me about the project initially. But yeah, no, it's like we're covering games that nobody has heard of, and Tier, it's like the name itself is kind of inscrutable, and that was like, that was kind of intentional. We sort of did want to be like, we are standing strong and against the tide of SEO, But
but I think it's the weird thing because I think you're tapping into like a different like just a different side of games. Like if you're coming from a very traditional like games press, like video game culture, like if you're coming from that world, like these games, probably like Etherrain is not an unknown game developer,
No, certainly not.
But they exist in like a different space than is the traditional game dev space and game journalism space.
Well, I think that's kind of the thing because I feel like, I think like any of Etherrain's games, like even in like the heyday of like Waypoint and Fanbyte and like RPS used to have like a free games column.
Yeah.
For many years, and like RPS actually still does like a fair amount of like smaller indie coverage.
RPS is the only one that kind of like skirts into this sort of territory from time to time of like the big websites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And but like the most like a game like Mr. Rain or Solve It Service, which we covered extensively in our first issue, would get is like here's what this game is, and here's maybe why you should play it.
Right,
and that's not, and that's not bad. Like that has a purpose, right?
Right,
and it serves a real function. And like I want to, and I do also kind of miss like it's kind of hard to think about like like even with movies, even it's like, well, anyway, with movies, even it's like I know people who are like, oh, you're interested in like these kinds of movies, and so if I was like, hey, I want to get into like French New Wave, or I want to get into Soviet cinema, like I know people that I could literally just ask and be like, hey, what should I watch? Like in this, you know. And with games, I'm not saying I don't have any of those people, but it is kind of different.
Right.
And
like maybe,
I think that like, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say maybe that friend is less specialized, and they are just like your sicko itch friend or whatever. You know, they're they're just into all of it.
Right, which I feel like my taste is pretty eclectic in terms of game stuff. So it's cool, but it's like I think I wanted to build a space where indie games get something beyond the pitch and the sort of like, oh, this looks cool, and like a serious engagement. And that's also partially why, like, in our little manifesto on the website, I have like a section that's like, we're haters.
Yes.
Because I think that that's like an important element of like, even just taking games seriously as like an artistic medium is also being like, I can have intense negative reactions. And we haven't really had that. I mean, I was kind of negative about Welcome to Elk in my thing for this month or last month. But it hasn't like necessarily come up yet, but I want there to be space and room for like any kind of serious critical engagement, right? Right. Even if stuff that we're, because it, you know, I mean, the fact that we're on the show, it's like we're kind of aligned with the developer space in a certain sense, right? Like we want more visibility for these games. We want them to get more serious, like critical attention, and we want to like build out the space for that. But I think that kind of means also that like it's not all positive. Right. And the more that we kind of ground that territory into the space, the healthier the space will be, I think.
You're talking to a fellow hater over here.
Yeah.
I think like a disdain for something is just as good as like, you know, especially like I love works where they have like, my favorite thing is seeing that a work has a very polarizing or like strong reaction, because I'm like, oh, because it makes people feel things. Totally.
Kind of reminds me of the discourse around Skinamarink. I haven't seen it, but I know it gets really strong reactions, whether it's negative or positive, out of people. Like, where it's literally a Marmite movie, but it's like but that's a good thing. Like, you don't want to be neutral about it. And I think a lot of times, a lot of game, well, I shouldn't, this gonna sound so snobby. I was gonna say what they call games criticism. No, but that's not what I was gonna say. But I was gonna say, like, when you look at a review, I guess, like on, you know, just the typical big game coverage site, it's usually the ones that I like, the reviews that I remember the most, where people don't mind skirting a little bit more into their personal feelings kind of territory about the game. Like, yes, they do look at it from the objective-ish side of things, but they're also willing to go, this part of the game I hated.
Right.
You might hate this too, because if you've played anything like this, you'll hate it. That kind of thing. And I appreciate that. Those ones are usually the ones or even if they just add, like, you know, a personal gaming memory to it, where they go, oh yeah, this reminded me of when I played Dig Dug when blah 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 or whatever. So like I think that's kind of missing a lot of the time. It's you know, I think they even said this in a recent article about why a lot of games writing sites were laying off a lot of people, was that there was such a focus on the marketing side of things, so you had to kind of keep the language very neutral, like, you know, it's Elden Ring, so don't talk smack about Elden Ring, you know,
yes, right.
Give us something that we can put out there and go, wow, it's game of the year.
Right. Well, I think it is, like, I mean, I noticed in my own, you know, reviews, like I reviewed 3 things last month, and like I would kind of tailor the score that I gave the game less to my feelings about the game and more to like the copy I had written, which sometimes was like, okay, here's the thing I liked, here's the thing I didn't like that has this. And so like, I think if I were like ranking like some of these games, if I were ranking them on Backlogged or like personally, I would give them a lower score than like I reviewed them. I think there is this real pull towards a kind of like structure, and not just like pull, like I got edits and like I'm not calling this person out, like it makes sense. But like I got edits, it was like you need to make this more like a normal game review. And I was like, okay, like you're all right, like I could do it.
Yeah, it's like because it's a very odd thing, and I obsess constantly, or I think constantly about the top one. I don't know if either of you were contributors. You were polled for GQ's top 100 games of all time.
No.
I
I wish.
But I think about it a lot as like a portrait of like video game coverage, and like how the intense recency bias, and also
I could imagine.
there's like I don't think I was double checking that there's not like there's entire genres missing, you know. It's very
I can imagine.
Right.
it's very odd, but that is kind of like these like it is like, okay, what's huge, like what are the big games, you know, what are like how can we get people, we want people to read about Elden Ring on our website as opposed to somebody else's website.
Yeah.
How can we
This
get
top 10 is kind of tragic.
truly it is
Right now.
like I like plenty of those games, but they're like
Oh yeah.
not. I would never put them in a top 100 even. I don't think. Maybe Metal Gear would find its way on there, and Tetris.
Right.
But
I mean, are you still? Where are you in your FromSoft journey?
I took a break.
So fair. That's a lot of history to go
at Last
through.
Raven, I took a break.
Okay, yeah. So you haven't played Souls like at all.
I've played
Right.
Dark Souls and Bloodborne.
Oh, okay.
Like,
So you played these two that are in the top
yes,
10.
and I think they're cool. I think Bloodborne looks cool as hell. Like,
I
Yeah.
love Bloodborne.
and it
I
had
haven't finished it, but I love what I've played of it. Yeah.
and it does, like, it has the little things that I like about games. Like, I love little tiny details and things.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm the person who's like, partially because I just played it before the show, but I am in love with the boots in Symphony of the Night. They make you a little bit taller.
Oh, that's cool.
and then you eat peanuts by catching them in your mouth after you throw them in the air. Like,
Yeah.
I've been like, that's part of playing that. It's got me thinking of like, I don't think they've made a better. I wonder if they've ever made a better one of these. Like, I don't think anyone has made a better one of those since Symphony of the Night. Sometimes,
Right. Yeah.
whatever better means, of course, you know. But like there's like it's that weird iterative that must be a strange thing as in criticism of like games. The notion of it being so like progressive, not progressive in like the social sense, but in terms of it makes games progress with time, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's like the assumption, like, oh, well, these older ones are not as good as these newer ones because the newer ones are newer and they've improved on XY elements of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Breath of the Wild is better than Link to the Past because you can climb to the mountain over there.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you
and
can go straight to the end. Or
Right.
I can't remember. I think if I remember correctly.
It's in 3D, so it has to be better.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's like a weird thing to reconcile when you were in that more mainstream journalism space, criticism space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think it is also I just think it's difficult to have a sense of history, not only like within video games itself, but just video games interconnection to other mediums.
Right.
Like how many Silent Hill YouTubers have watched Jacob's Ladder?
Probably a couple.
Yeah.
At least.
Like I'm
Yeah.
wrong. I would love to be proven wrong on this. In fact, if you were a Silent Hill YouTuber and you've seen Jacob's Ladder, pop up in the chat, please.
Yeah, be like, I've seen it, but it's what I think of as like the Star Wars problem,
Yeah.
which
Mhm.
is, you know, George Lucas watched old adventure serials and Kurosawa movies, and people who make Star Wars now watch Star Wars.
Yeah, literally.
That's
yeah.
true.
and
Huh.
it's like people it's important. People miss that the things that they like were influenced by a lot of other things, not
Yeah.
just a different version of that thing.
Yeah, both within
Right.
and outside of
Yeah.
the ecosystems. Because like I find, like for instance, I just finished writing some stuff that had to do with mystery and survival horror, and
Mhm.
it was really interesting to see how it was like it kind of was like I wouldn't say a cascading effect, but it was kind of almost like that, where it was like Resident Evil got made, and then somebody was like, "We need to make one of those," and then they made, I think Silent Hill came out of that. I'm trying to remember how it goes, but it was
Yeah.
basically like same thing with Clock Tower influencing other games getting made,
Yeah.
and then and then the source text that they're taking from as well, like
Yeah.
both Clock Tower and
with their Jennifer Connelly literal sprite rips.
yes, yeah, literally. I just watched that film too, and I was like, wow, this is like literally the last 20 minutes of this film is just the pitch for Clock Tower. It's like,
Right. Yeah.
not all of it, but just like, Jennifer Connelly, this is a Scissor Man. Yeah, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think both, what was it? It was both Yoshio Sakamoto and Hifumi Kono. They both liked Dario Argento's films a lot. So it's
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's always kind of neat to see like how there really are a lot of close interconnections, but a lot of
Yeah.
times, since it doesn't get talked about so often, because it's not, it's not as I don't know. Like you said, there's
Yeah.
other things that they need to focus on.
Right.
Well, I think part of it is to some
guess.
degree that like there is like almost like a canon of films that video games pilfer from. You know, like
Right.
Star Wars, Alien, maybe
John.
Goodfellas, I guess. Or,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
some gangster movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff tends to kind of be in that zone. And I think it can be hard to kind of suss out some of the like weirder intricacies,
Right.
if you don't have the history, right?
Right, because even those films themselves are very easily within like pop. I mean, they're all the ones you named. Besides, I guess Goodfellas in the sense that Scorsese's still making movies, but like they're still
Right.
the Alien movie like just came out last week.
Yeah.
But people's general knowledge of like giallo is a little bit lower.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's
for sure.
it's hard to pick out like those more immediate influences.
Yeah, well, I think it's even harder because like this is like a pretty common game criticism refrain, but like why don't games borrow more from theater or like a medium that they're a little better or more analogous to?
Yeah,
maybe would be the way to phrase it, right? And I think that stuff is even harder like to kind of think about. Even though I do think that like, I mean, like I played. I never talked about film and Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 a lot in my thing I wrote for bullet points, but part of that was also like, hey, there's some theater in this. Like the voices in your head, the psychosis stuff is just a Greek chorus, right? Like functionally.
right.
True.
And like that yeah, I just think that stuff kind of can be difficult to like think through, and also that it's like all the cinematography in that game is like tiresome Children of Men, God of War 2018 shit that is so tiring to look at. So it becomes, I think, a little difficult to like. Some of that stuff gets really loud in a way that like the other things, like thinking about like how I'm forgetting his name, but the Ocarina of Time director was like studied puppetry in college.
Oh yeah, that's
like has like literally has a theater background, and like people don't really connect those dots, I think.
Yeah, I think the most that I've heard, like especially with the Nintendo developers, is people like they like hearing about different backgrounds if it's just kind of like more on the trivia side of things, like
right,
the lady that knits the Yoshi dolls, and then they went, oh, we should make a yarn styled Yoshi game or something, or I think Miyamoto had a similar thing, but I don't remember what his craft was. But yeah, but like, people tend to focus
Well, I know that like Pikmin came out of him gardening and stuff like that. Like
Oh, that's
there's and I think that's part of what not to fuck Nintendo first and foremost. Okay, just to be clear about my
Yes.
stance. But I think that is part of what gives those games some staying power and gives them a lot of time and kind of the cultural imagination is in part because they feel grounded in something that's not just video game culture, right? That there is an outside to it. To some degree,
they don't feel like they are necessarily from, okay, here is their take on X video game genre.
Yeah.
That is okay, well, of course, deck building roguelikes are popular now, so here's Mario's deck building roguelike.
Right? Because I think the closest thing to that is Splatoon.
Yeah,
but even that is so popular music is a huge thing, and street fashion.
Yeah.
And even playing with water guns with your friends in the summertime, or going down a slip and slide, or all key source text.
Yeah, right.
Right.
It's not
the most fun source text.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a copy paste hero shooter, but with Mario and Yoshi.
Right, yeah. God, can you imagine? Jesus Christ.
There's
Nintendo, hire this man.
Nintendo, give me a job. I can copy and paste. Let me tell you about Samus Aran in a Vampire Survivor
Yeah, you could. That'd be easy to make, I think.
That'd be pretty easy to make, yeah.
A lot of critters.
Well, it's very easy to make a Vampire Survivors because it's just not even a video game. It's just
No, I'm with you. You.
I saw a tweet. One of the last few good tweets online was it was a Balatro Vampire Survivors crossover or something, and there's I'll paraphrase it. It's fans of jingling keys are going crazy right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is that is so much of, and this is also the thing that's hard about mainstream games coverage right now. Is just that how do you review the latest Fortnite patch?
Right.
Which is just all that stuff it's jangling keys all the way down. How do you have a substantive critical thought about the Dorito Island in Fortnite? What are you supposed to do when you're presented with such riches?
Grace, I need your latest reviews of the new characters I can pull in Genshin Impact.
Yeah. Oh.
And the percentages.
Yes, tell me the percentages. Yeah. I do wish all video games were just had slot machines in front of them, so I could get dopamine hits and a worse experience.
Yeah, but I mean, it is that's also a key. Just the casino.
Yeah,
is an important element in thinking about video games now. Unfortunately.
We have some questions here while we're in the midway point. I might as well get to these. And midway, I say, in that my mental hour. Who knows? This show often goes well beyond when I even after I say time to shut down the show. This is from Steven Santana. With an ever expanding backlog and absolutely nowhere near the time to actually play them all, what games have you played, written about recently that wouldn't suffer too much from being watched instead of played?
Ooh. I mean,
does it have to be a big game or just any game?
Yeah, or
game?
I can expand this up more widely to also just in your life. Are there genres you Oh, I prefer to watch this one, or what you think? I personally love that kind of like late 90s, early aughts sort of like extremely serious adventure games.
Right, yeah.
Of like your sanatoriums and your phantasmagorias.
Oh yeah, that stuff is cool.
But I do not want to play them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
I am fine to watch people play them on my behalf. But there's
for me, it's more of an access issue.
Yeah.
Like I really like the lore and the world building for games that are first person, like Dishonored, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I have always struggled with first person games, like on a physical level. Like
Yeah.
I find that
Right.
I easily get sick from playing that type of game. Um, and I can play, like, if it's not too frenetic, I can usually play it for a little longer, but not much longer than I usually
Right.
would. So I feel
Yeah.
like as long as somebody isn't swinging the camera wildly, I actually would probably prefer to just watch somebody play it so I can see the story and enjoy the concept art and all that. But like,
Right. Yeah.
but not, and feel like, like some people are really good at no commentary playthroughs too, where like um you can just focus on the immersive world that's being, that you're put into, as opposed to ones where, and I love some people that do commentary, but
Yeah.
sometimes there's just a bit too much
I,
chatter.
I, I have. I think I talked about. No, I talked about this in person last week. I was like, did I talk about this
Mm-hmm.
ratio? No, I talked to the idea of like there are some people who I lately to generally just don't like the opinion of, but they're playing games that I want to see people talk about. So I'm like, I will gladly
Mm,
kind of tolerate what I think is like a view on games as a medium that I don't agree with. Like, usually it's a more traditional of like, games have to do this and that, and prescribing like good
Right.
game
Yeah.
design to
Sure.
them.
mm.
But it's like, well, if somebody at least is playing this game, so I don't. I want to have on the side. I want to think about all these random RPGs or something. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
even for like that's a good point too, is that sometimes it is worth it. Mr. Rayners, I struggled a bit with it, not in like a like I didn't like it way, but more like um playthroughs don't last too long with Mr. Rayners, but there is a lot of like tricky bits with like the puzzles where you are like
Yeah.
realigning your value or whatever. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if I wasn't really sure on like what to do with like the value puzzles later on, I would look up videos and not to sound shady, but a lot of the people that were doing playthroughs were like the kind of VTubers that I usually never go anywhere near. so,
Right.
so,
That
but
is
it was one of those
like
things where I was like, okay, but they are playing it, so I can, see what they did.
right. Yeah, that is
Um,
like a weird dynamic that like a lot of coverage of itch games is from people being like, "Whoa, isn't this so weird?" Whoa,
Right.
you know.
yeah.
That kind of, and that's unfortunate. I think the big thing for me in this space is like strategy and tactics
Yeah.
games,
Mm,
which I have a little bit of a history with, but have never really gotten into. And so I used to be big into like watching Waypoint people do like XCOM streams and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
just because I like watching people like talk through those kinds of decisions and like work through those kinds of things.
that's
Yeah, and I think the thing that I do most often though is like if I'm into some big RPG or like kind of like computer RPG where there's like some level of branching paths or like story stuff, I'll usually go and
mm,
like look up like, oh, here's all the, here's some of the big cutscenes that I would have missed, like
Right.
taking the path I did.
that
Right.
makes sense. Yeah, because it can be
Um,
hundreds of hours. I mean,
yeah,
even the
exactly.
horror
Yeah.
visual novel, the
Right.
letter has like so many different branching paths. I
Yeah.
think I've only seen about like 25% of it, and
Right.
a lot of times there's a lot of burnout.
Yeah. Well, literally,
Just
like it's like
okay, yeah,
I'm
this is great,
playing.
but
I'm
that's a
playing
lot.
Cyberpunk right now, and I'm like kind of like what's the other like quest lines like as you pick an origin at the beginning? Like what are those like? And I'm
Yeah.
not gonna play the game again to find that out.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
Then you have to do the difficulty of like, okay, let me find a thing that I find those things, but then I have to find a one that I like.
Yeah.
right?
fair
Yeah,
enough,
literally.
yeah.
Yeah. Ooh.
Thank you.
Fair.
No commentary. But sometimes I like, and these are very rare. There's not very many of like really extensive, like in depth playthroughs that are like, oh, okay, this is someone telling you about all the little tidbits that I don't know about.
Right. Yeah. Like I know like Chip and Ironicus
That
is kind
is
of like that.
exactly
Yeah.
like I like. Sometimes I like, oh yeah, I like I want to watch a Chip and Ironicus LP, but I want to play the game first. and then I will watch like the thoroughness
yeah.
of like. But also that's why those things take forever.
Yeah. Well, they're literally so like it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I think I think it shows like people like I have lots of friends who are like not into Let's Plays generally, but like love Chip and Ironics.
That is me. I generally
yeah,
am not
yeah.
into Let's Plays. But I love those things of just like the minutia. It's kind of like when you watch a movie and then you go over to the special feature to the essay, like the video essay after it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. It's like, oh yeah. Kind of like as a way to be in conversation with someone about it.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's really. I mean, even though games are so like time consuming, there is often not that kind of. Well, maybe this isn't true because speedrunning is maybe a form of this in some way, like getting to know something really intimately.
Yeah,
but just true. Like like I one of my favorite films is, speaking of Scorsese again, is The Last Temptation of Christ.
Okay.
And so I rewatched it. We started a tradition where we're gonna watch it on Easter.
Yeah, right.
every year. And so I rewatched it. I was like, man, that's so good. And so I like read the novel for the first time and like read a book about the production history, which like as it was a super controversial film and was like, I mean, showings were bombed in Europe, and like there was vandalism and stuff. So kind of about like that, about like the way the studio tried to like contain or deal with like this massive evangelical backlash to the film, and really, and then watch like the commentary and all the bonus features, and that was like really fulfilling and cool.
Yeah, the true death of like physical media is like the death of commentaries.
Yeah, totally.
As
I
like
never thought about that.
As like a teen who watched like every Simpsons commentary as much as I watched the show itself. It's like
right, sure, yeah.
It's like, oh, I could get that's a TV show where every episode of it has commentary from the people who made it.
Yeah, well, I was really into like the DCAU, so like Batman animated series on stuff, and a lot of those because I would get them. I think I got them from Netflix, the like DVDs, and owned a few of them, and so would watch the like audio commentaries on that, and stuff like that. Yeah, I was like into hearing from like those guys about doing that stuff,
Yeah, what is the thought process behind it? What is the It also is like, oh, what's the person behind it like?
Yeah, totally.
That's true. Yeah, I was wondering, is this still a thing? But I don't think it is as much as when Firewatch came out. That certain games would include commentary, like director's commentary.
Yeah.
I know, like Alan Wake Remastered has a bunch of I think it has 2 commentary tracks actually.
That's really cool. Yeah.
And so it's out there, but it's not super common, I would say. And I think part of it's like I don't know how you do that with like an Ubisoft open world game, for example, or like Cyberpunk or anything of sufficient size. It becomes like unimaginably difficult.
Right.
Yeah,
to actually scrape that together.
How do you sync that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you figure out? Because like with something like Firewatch per se, it's pretty linear. So I guess like triggering the right clips at the right time is a lot easier as opposed to if somebody's running around a big huge open world map and doing a very specific origin run or something like that. So yeah.
But even if you broke them out like in terms of like, okay, we're not going to fit it into the world of Cyberpunk, but we're going to just like include an LP of Cyberpunk with like creative team members. That's still like 100-hour recording,
Yeah, whatever. And like it's I have a hard time imagining people like wanting to put in the time to do that, especially if you're like already working, whatever.
Yes.
Working insane hours to put the thing out, and then it's like,
and now it's like,
we need you to come back to like record level design commentary. And it's
exactly.
Like, fuck you, I'm going home.
It's not right. But 60 people are gonna watch this and love it.
Yeah. But I mean, there's some people like I'm forgetting his name. Shit. But the the Hard Lads
Robert
designer.
Yang?
Robert Yang used to do those like level design streams, or maybe still does. I don't know. But like that, there are some sort of like developer side people playing something like Half-Life 2 and like talking through like, hey, here's why the game is like structured the way it is, and here's why it works the way it does. Right.
Which is,
and like GDC talks and things like that.
Which is different than the.
Which is different, yeah. But it's also not consumer facing, right?
Right.
It's,
and also different from like the YouTube game developer grind set kind of thing of like.
Right. Yeah.
I am both a game developer and a game developer YouTuber, because that feels like very intentioned for like building an audience, like making a new job for yourself on top of being a game developer.
Oh yeah, I don't. Well, I think that is the thing is you have to. I mean, unless you have some cash to like hire a PR agency or whatever you do, you wear a lot of hats.
Right.
And that is tricky.
Or you put all those hats on the rack and just be like, this is not going to make any money. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no, literally.
Which is,
well, I mean, that's our method. That's your method. It's something I suppose.
Right. It's something I've been thinking about of like, when you think about, some like studios and developers that go to prominence and have like huge things that will have like one game on their belt and like, that's it. But there's like these mountains of hobbyist devs that have like super impressive catalogs.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Classic example of like the Catamites.
Right. I will. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna shout out because I just remembered that Melo Santani of Majestic Games just put out this like Substack called After Journey's End, which is like indie postmortem basically, or like people talking through specific design choices that they made, and that's like kind of akin to. So again, like people are kind of trying to make this space.
Yeah, and that is going to be a semi-monthly. I forget the release schedule on that.
But, right, I'm not sure either.
But you can look it up. It'll be around.
Yeah, it is like it's like once every couple months, I think.
I think the second one just came out.
Yes, it was like a week ago. Yeah, or a little over a week ago.
And these sorts of things are also not like release window dependent,
No, yeah.
Which is like a good thing of like, oh no, we're not going to do the next one because enough people didn't tune into our last one around our release window. It's like they're just going to keep putting it out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I think it's good to have like I don't know. I mean, I think I just want sort of a more robust feeling critical space, and especially like it to be accessible.
I've got I was gonna say I have a perfect question, but then you gave me the perfect 1-2 punch. So I have a question here.
Okay.
From friend of the show, Pascas Luis Aguasivas. It is, what are your thoughts on this is for Grayson Phoenix, of course. What are your thoughts on the current state of video game criticism, and how does TR source as contributors?
That's a good question. I mean, we could talk more. We've talked a lot about the current state of game criticism, I guess, because I feel like part of it is Tier itself is a response to the state of things, right?
Yeah.
And it is also like partially driven out, at least for me. I can't speak for Phoenix on this, but like being a part of or being tangential to, like I was in a couple Discords of like, we're going to do a small games website that just like completely fell apart. Basically because it was like too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yes.
Right. Then
let me tell you about
and then I was
the sustainable power of only one person doing something.
Yeah, literally.
Just keep doing it.
Keep doing it. Yeah,
Right.
I mean that's why we that's why we have two people. Is so
Yes.
it's like
Oh.
I'm having a rough one. Can you?
Too many for me. Too many for me. Too many cooks in my kitchen.
And then also being like, I was a columnist at Uppercut for a while, and so it was like I was never like on staff there, so to speak, but I was like close with and friends with a bunch of those people. I mean, and still am. And so it's kind of is like over the past 5 years, I've been in a lot of these kinds of spaces or been tangential to them and being like, what are the things that I would like to take with that I think were good, and what were the things that I think were unfortunate or like ill-considered or whatever about those kinds of things. And so I think here, hopefully, like the manifesto that's on the website, on the about page, and like things like that, like speak to pretty directly, like, here's where things are at, here is how we want to differentiate ourselves from that. Phoenix, do you have more thoughts there? I think I'm done.
Yeah, so I remember at one point we were talking about how like and this had to do a bit with like your piece that you did for Paste about
critical hits
collection, critical hits. Yeah, I was gonna say I think that it's like some of your thoughts on that are also kind of like my thoughts on the current state of games criticism. Is that like, in addition to what we talk about on our manifesto page, it's also like, we already have some amazing writers out there, and some writing too that people harken back to, within certain circles, like that we're both in, that will like they'll say like for instance Kieran Gillen's new games journalism piece or something like that outside of our circles, literary writers or just like people that get Lit Hub talking about them will say that they won't know about it at all. Or maybe one of them will know about it, but like they'll go, oh, is this like worth reading or something like that? And it's like, well, yeah, because it was a big moment for games criticism online. It's like I think similar to game studies in general, like games theory and stuff like that. It's pretty young, but there's still a lot of, I don't know. I just think it bothered me for quite some time that there is a lot of people that have a lot of nuanced opinions out there.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been like accessible in the way that we're like it is and it isn't. It's like I think there needs to be more like concentrated. Like I guess I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things, because specifically my thing about critical hits is in part about like how critical hits isn't really that different from like you read it and a lot of those essays could have been on Polygon like 5 years ago, like it's really like a bunch of people kind of who are unfamiliar with the genre's history, like recreating all of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And because like they're really, it's a combination of some things that like I think maybe because the website space is so, at once so turbulent and also so stagnant, like it makes it, I think, really difficult to like grow as a writer and a thinker and to expand. Like it becomes, I think, easier to stay like in your kind of lane or become stagnant, which I think happens to like a lot of people who have been in the space for 10 plus years. And then also because the burnout cycle is so quick, right? Like most people don't get there and they are out of the industry after 4 or 5 years. And so, you get new people coming in who aren't familiar with what has occurred, who haven't read stuff beyond like the last couple of years or the last 3 years or whatever, right? And so I think that sensation is just really brutal, and that churn through. Like I was thinking about like, and this was like probably almost 10 years ago now, but I forget what thing, and I wish I could remember. But like Lee Alexander gave a talk at some games conference. Like soon after she kind of moved into development and like left journalism, like after what was her thing at Boing Boing called? I'm forgetting everything.
It's always the case. You'll know about it beforehand, and then as soon as
Yeah.
goes, so what was that thing? You're like,
They're like, anyway. But she was talking about how like she started reading this game critic from the like late 90s, early 2000s, who was like kind of an early game studies person, who I'm also forgetting. I think like Barbie versus Godzilla, which is like a pretty early game design.
Fullerton, I think.
Maybe.
Okay, I can't remember for sure.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly either. But she was like, she wrote this essay that's like really similar to something I wrote. She kind of looks like me. You know, and like I had no idea that this person existed until like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Right? And like that, I think that sensation is like alive and well.
Right.
You know,
increasingly as people's works are also just disappearing off of the web.
Yes, literally, yeah.
Exactly.
Like
so
where can you, yeah.
So how do you find that? It's like how often are you using the Internet Archive to look up old games writing articles that may exist on that,
Yeah.
For sure.
So it's
like I'm glad it exists as a tool, but at the same time, it's like, wow, that is just how ephemeral some of this stuff is.
Yeah. Well, I also think there's also like a, we were just talking about how there's kind of a lack of like, consumer focus, like behind the scenes kind of stuff, like commentary, this sort of thing. Like I think the closest thing to that is the GDC talk, I suppose, but that is sort of a different thing. And then, but also there's especially a lack of like people talking through GamesCrit and being like, here's what I've learned, or like, here's what, like I really loved the Waypoint show that they did. I don't remember what it's called, but they just read an article aloud and then talked about it.
That's cool.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was and the thing is, it was just like too difficult to produce, took too much time, and was also like not, like people didn't listen to them, right? Like,
because things are like the niche of the niche of the niche.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it's tough, and so I kind of like I want these things to exist, but it is also I think like kind of a reality that we have to contend with, especially that like there is some level of like not everybody is interested in this,
right?
And we can only activate like a fraction of people.
Yeah.
And like and maybe that can still be a sustainable business model, and that can still be like, and that can still be something that's worth doing, right? But it is like, but it is tricky.
Because
it is tricky.
Yeah, because I think, a lot of those, the writers of today and tomorrow are looking for those ultra niche things. So like a lot of things like that are not like consumer forward, but then it's like, well, it's the difficulties of making anything but also needing money.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of the thing. That's part like we're able to do the work that we do because we make like $160 on total a month, and like can pay each other a little bit and like sustain, and pay for the website and like all that stuff, right? Like that's like a huge part of like being able to do the work and feeling it out, right? And that's also partially why like I would really like to move to like a nonprofit model, just because like if we could get grants or something, or have sort of a financial model that isn't just based on people hitting the subscribe button, then that frees us up a lot, right?
Because a lot of people are asking you to hit that subscribe button nowadays.
Yeah, literally, and you have limited time. You know.
And you can only hit that like so many. You only got so many subscribe buttons. You can afford a month.
For sure.
And that's like part of the difficulties of like everyone going their own separate ways in a lot of ways. It's like, okay, you talk about, we mentioned at the top of the show, you're like, oh, I like Giant Bomb, I'm going to subscribe to Giant Bomb. It's like, oh, now I have to subscribe to Giant Bomb and the 6 people that split off from Giant Bomb. It's like, I can't afford that anymore.
Yes, literally.
And that's the same thing that happens. Like,
you got to pick your battles. So like, okay, well, I guess I'm Nextlander. I guess that's what I'm subscribing to. Right.
Your favorite website explodes, and then which of the followers which of the different 8 projects do you then support?
Yeah. I was just going to answer the second part of that question, which is how do we source people? It's basically just people in our Rolodex at the moment. We do have an email, which I will say right here, which is just tier review, TIEREVIEW at proton.me. And if you were interested in writing for us, like, you can email us and like send us a couple clips. There is no guarantee that will result in anything. But like, you're definitely welcome to do it. It's definitely chill. Part of the reason I would like to do book reviews or something is I would like to have something that people can pitch to.
Yeah.
But I think a part of the thing that happened with Uppercut is like having a pitch window even just means you have to sort through like 30 pitches or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's super exhausting. And you can only publish like 1 or 2. Right. And so it's just a fuck ton of work, like getting that set up.
No,
and so
AI.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. And there's a billion things that make it more complicated now. So it is like, something that is important to us is we do want to let new people in and like help new writers have a byline.
Yeah.
But at least for right now, that does kind of have to be like, we have to reach out to you directly because like, otherwise it's just not
right. Like
work for us.
I've been doing this for almost 5 years, and I still like. Well, there's the open submission period. Like the commissions, both the covers and the games, are still closed doors. That is like nobody pitches me on those. Those are things that I seek out the people specifically for that.
Yeah. And that's also again based on Bullet Points' model, right? Like that's how they do it. And so I was like, hey, it works for them.
Yeah,
I want to take that.
Right.
Thank you.
The thing is, like, there's an infinite number of like you even if you don't repeat writers, you are at no shortage of writers.
Yeah.
Speaking of book reviews, these are 2 very long questions.
Okay.
From Ludzu. I want to say this one that has book reviews in the text first. I'm just do them in order because now that I start to read it starts with also. So maybe I should read the first question first.
Okay, read the first question first.
I heard a little bit about this from Grace already, but was curious if you don't cover it already. How are games covered for the site decided on? How far in advance any common ground between them that makes them fascinating to both of you? How blind you and the writers you bring on are going into them against what might interest you about those games? Anything like that. So I guess broadly, how do you pick games?
Yeah,
that's an interesting one because there's a lot of things we chat about with regards to that, and a lot of times, especially right now in the early days of it, we're kind of trying to, choose stuff that is obviously, related to our manifesto of like what kind of games we want to cover, but also sometimes it's also about making sure we show a variety of the kinds of stuff that we will be covering over time as well. Because, like we don't want, like we had like a couple games that I remember for the second issue that we were kind of bandying back and forth about. And then realizing, wait, these are all cyberpunk. Or these are all body horror. And we were like, maybe we should take a look at some other genres just so that we don't
because like
seem like, oh, guess what, tier only covers body horror or that kind of thing. So so that factors in for sure. Is like, what did we cover last? Okay, we did that. Maybe something more mechanics focused or that kind of thing.
I need to put it up on the website, but for September we're covering Overwhelm, which is kind of a reverse Metroidvania. Enemies get stronger as you progress. And that was kind of built out of like, for me, an intention of like, let's do something that is like has a strong kind of visual aesthetic, but doesn't really have like a ton of narrative. Like, there's like 2 plot points that happen, right? And it's mostly just like, so engaging with it means engaging with like how the mechanics work, because I think both of us like come from kind of almost like lit theory background or like. Definitely. Like very narratologist approach, I suppose. And so I wanted to kind of stretch, and we covered, Aetherane's games have like puzzles and in some ways have like a kind of procedural rhetoric component, but are very narrative, are basically visual novels, right?
Yeah.
And Welcome to Elk is very, is kind of an adventure game.
Yeah.
Or a visual novel, you could also describe it that way. And so I think I wanted to do something that was like more twitchy, more mechanics focused. And that was definitely like the thought going into that. And I think there is some degree of like, we're still figuring this out. And I think also I would like to maybe have it, because I don't know what we're covering in October.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, and maybe we should have that planned out a little bit further. So we're still learning, I think,
Right,
a little bit. Like what is actually the healthy process for us and what works. But
as of this year, I was until this year, I should say rather, I was building issues the month before that they were due. So basically, I would be receiving like. All throughout August, I would be getting September's, and now I have got those, and now throughout August, I'm building out October's. You know, it takes time to really find that time and be like, okay, we need to I want to think far ahead, build out the catalog and build out like what a schedule looks like, because you also, like you said, you don't fully know exactly what tier is.
Yeah.
At this point,
we have a lot of intentions.
Yes.
We have a lot of ideas about what we would like. But
criticism is a creative work, and like in a creative work, you suddenly it shifts with time. And
I will say, she couldn't make it, but I invited our contributor, Charlotte Lindsay, who wrote Deep Anxiety, Deferred Hope, and Disappointment for our first issue. And I think that is basically like the because she was also the reason I invited her, because she was someone I talked to a lot before I even brought Phoenix on, just like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and like what would that look like? And I think that is an essay that is very much like a Northern Star for me in terms of like what I would like the site to do. It's so, a lot of it's about Susan Sontag, so it's so engaged in like broader stuff and is very kind of literary focused, but also really poetic. And I'm gushing about it because and also Charlotte's my friend, and so I'm biased, right? This is also part of the thing is that Phoenix and I are also friends. You know? So it's
you're in company with someone who often runs into the exact same problem of like, you're talking about things that you like, and you don't want to sound like, I'm marketing, yes, technically, but I guess I'm just saying because I like this thing a lot.
Yes, so I think in terms of like, that is something that I would really, those are the kinds of things that I would like to continue to curate and make for the site. And it is kind of also because it has to come from whatever writer we're working with and that's also the thing is we usually, we pick the game before, and then I do try and think about like who would I like to hear from on this, and what.
Yes, I was just gonna say that's kind of my thing too. Is that like when we're chatting about what games to choose, it's also like this person would be so good at this game kind of thing. But like it's not like I don't want to say it's a chicken or the egg thing, but like it's like you said, like usually it's game first, but sometimes it might also be game plus. Wow, this writer might actually be an interesting take on. Because
Etherrain was very much motivated as a first issue, just literally because I was like, I want to read more stuff on these games. Like they're so cool, they're so thorny and complicated and strange that like you could 5 different people could approach Tomorrow Won't Come With Those Without Blank, and like everyone could come away with something very different. And something different that they're focusing on. And so that is like, that was partially, and like that is the that's like the holy grail, I guess, of like, I would like to approach a game that I feel like every person writing about it is going to feel something very different about it, and write about something very different.
Which I'm actually looking forward to the person that has like a very negative reaction to something.
Me too. Like, I really am
very excited with like the first one that goes like, here's why I despise this.
It's kind of hard to, because like Welcome to Elk, I was like pretty lukewarm on. I would say I did not feel like actively hostile to it. I was just like, okay, cool. Like,
so
like I see what I see what you're doing.
That I often feel is also like actually in some ways like the worst you can feel about something.
Right. And that's part of why my essay kind of focused it on something that I felt like was really lacking in it, and also had where the high points and the low points of the game were. And so that was like where I concentrated on. Right.
Because it is something that disconnects me from like, I don't know, games increasingly. It's like, giant wars being waged over the middest games in the world.
Yeah, that's
That are like, or like this thing that's a derivative of a genre that was made 10 years ago. I guess I don't know.
yeah, right.
And it's odd. That's the thing I run into is like, oh, what is this game? Like, I'm like, oh, it's just that.
Yeah.
I think
Black
like-
Myth Wukong out now.
yes, right, exactly. Right. Yeah, right. It is all those of like. I guess I feel there's all sorts of space in for these sorts of things. But I'm going to get to the second question before I start thinking about something else.
Yeah.
This one's even longer. Get prepared.
All right.
Also, hearing you talk about the possibility of book reviews alongside game reviews made me wonder, as a fan of Charlotte's connection with illness as a metaphor with Mr. Rainier in a way that satisfyingly informs both if relating pieces from both mediums more closely and evenly within the space of one review, is something you've thought of doing more often. Not strictly
yeah. Okay,
not strictly 1 month about connections between this game and this book exclusively, but because that could narrow the space, etc., etc. More concurrently doing with games, more emphasis on relating to whichever reading the writer feels is relevant to their takeaway from the game itself, and going in more depth rather than being a small section defining it, etc., etc. You get the general gist of the question.
Yeah. I mean, I think so with book reviews specifically, the idea was to provide a space where people could pitch a little bit.
Right.
And the idea was basically like, hey, any book that's like tech related kind of, or like about technology.
Yeah.
Kind of fits in. And so you could pitch something on a game studies book, on a science fiction novel, right? On and like send me a a 1 sentence pitch and 2 clips, and that's like it, So try to keep it like really contained, and then be like, I'd like to review this book,
Mm-hmm. And
that was sort of the idea with that, which would be really cool, I think. Although, yeah, we'll hopefully at some point we'll have Phoenix and I will have to put our heads together and maybe. Finally draft an actual version of this goal page and put that on the website.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that is a good thing. I think maybe that's something maybe we should think about encouraging writers to do explicitly.
Yeah.
Is to bring in some theoretical element, right?
I wonder how much like people to be nudged to be like, no, this is not like, I know you're used to writing for games websites, but this is not a games website.
Right, yeah. That's really...
Actually, that's true.
This is like... I hesitate to say this because this sounds like fucking pretentious.
No, I think... I was saying for...
But the idea... really, the idea is to do, like, an arts website about games.
Yes.
Rather than a games website that is arty.
Yeah.
I say at events constantly to people who don't like... who when I try to tell them about Indiepocalypse, they're like, I'm sorry, I don't play games. I tell them... this is more like art in the shape of a game.
Right, yes, yeah.
Than a game itself.
Well, that's sort of that's very much like... And because I think actually, like, this is something Charlotte and I talked about, but, like, we were, like, kind of like, maybe the best place for Games Crit is, like, the art section of a newspaper.
Yes.
Like, conceptually. I'm not saying that, like, that's... Like, obviously that maybe isn't going to work in a certain sense, but like conceptually it's like, actually, like maybe it should be alongside a movie review and feature review.
They're sneaking in. I mean Broken Pencil just started doing them this year.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's good to hear. Yeah.
They've started putting, and it is like like Terminal 64, it is stuff well off the beaten path.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think in terms of like positioning, like that it's just it's funny enough, and I'm not doing this to like toot my own horn, it's just related,
right?
That a lot of times when I write pieces for my Unwinnable column, I'm not like specifically looking to bring in broader text from literary theory or anything. It's just that there is a lot of stuff that will occur to me when I'm seeing games that I think, oh wait, no, that's totally related to the way games express things or something like that. So like that's another thing to think about too, is that like it's good to like deliberately like look at these things in a broader sense, but it's also sometimes just like a really interesting way to like get started on seeing games or seeing where there's gaps that games probably
well, I think that's also something that drew me to your work specifically was I think you have a real gift for drawing these kind of connections. Like, I mean, we've said this because we wrote about this for the website on a paywalled essay, but like thing about FF8. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was saying I'm a big fan of also that concept of like, because it is also, you know, you two reading each other's work. So much, we've been talking about this a lot. Like so much of like games press and games criticism gets lost and gets thrown away, or it's like very ephemeral. And this is like both a new piece of writing about two older pieces of writing.
Yeah. Well, and that's also kind of the idea behind that section or like that sort of thing is to try and just bring in other stuff and also have it be, I mean, because part of it's like it's paywalled, so it's both like I feel like, I don't know, the appeal of paywall content to me is that it's like you can take your tie off.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a little less straight-laced. You're like, oh yeah, you're already a fan, so like we can be a little messy in here.
Right.
You know, and that's cool. So, but yeah, I just think that essay is so good, and part of what makes it so interesting is that you bring in stuff that I never would have connected to FF8, but that like once you do it, it's like, oh, that makes complete sense, and like I'm seeing it now in a new way that I wouldn't have seen it before. You know.
Thank you. It's actually like related to that. It's, I think, like I have other critics to thank for getting to a point where I can do that, because I think before I started doing any of this professionally online, I was just running a blog because I just thought it was interesting that there wasn't too many people talking about interconnections between the different types of media and games. And when I started to see stuff come out by, you know, like critics like Dia, where she would talk about Susan Sontag and something. Cool. This is great. Like I can do that. Then so like I think that's part of what.
I mean, Dia's work. I kind of think of like Dia's work on photography. That I mean, she's done over the years. At Waypoint at Paste is like huge and like in like background of like background radiation of tier is like that's the coolest shit ever. You know. But anyway, sorry not to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's okay. I was just gonna say that because that's really cool. I guess basically with the paywall thing as well, I think Andrew, the thing that Grace and I wanted for that as well is that there's a lot of times that, and Grace brought this up in her piece about critical hits, is that a lot of, or no, I think it was a comment actually on co-host about your piece where you were talking to somebody about how a lot of times us game critics are either so busy that we don't read each other's work, or we could read each other's work, but instead we just don't for some reason. And then it's like, but that's kind of robbing the whole discourse.
Well, I think it's also one of the things that is legitimately tricky is that most games criticism is bad. You know, I mean, like I don't mean to. I don't know. Well, it's fine. I can talk shit. It's cool. But like I write for GameSpot. And like I've written stuff for GameSpot that I think I'm really proud of, and like I've read stuff on there that I've really liked, right? But like on average, if I go on GameSpot and like read a review, I'm gonna be a little bit annoyed about how the copy is, like just like foundationally. Right. And that's true of IGN. That's true of like many, even ones that have like a little more conscious styling. Like I think RPS is like, in terms of like of how it works as a website, is like high up for me. I think like is like this is close to what I would like a mainstream games website to be like. But even that, sometimes I'm like, but like it's, you know, it's hard. Sometimes it's legitimately hard to like sift through the noise, you know. And I think that's just true. Like, and especially at a bigger website like IGN or GameSpot, there's like people do good work there, but there's also, you know, and like
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there's just
so
one.
much
Well, and also
content.
there's so much like 200-word articles about a press release,
Right.
right? Which is like,
Mhm.
which is maybe helpful if you're looking for news about that exact thing, but
Like
otherwise
just
it's
that,
just
but
getting in
yeah.
your way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing
Um,
with some websites like IGN as well, which I think I struggle with, and I don't know if this is maybe like a neurodivergent thing with me, but like
yeah.
there's also just so many parts to that beast. Like I find
Yeah.
like it's like
Totally.
there's times where if I'm playing Ace Attorney and I look up a walkthrough, I'll realize like IGN has walkthroughs. IGN has forums where people are talking about the walkthroughs. IGN has an article that's specifically about this one element that could be in a walkthrough, but
Right.
it's separate some way.
Right. Because
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So,
enough people have
like
searched
after a
it.
while, it's like, oh boy, this is a lot to sift through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Literally.
just get a little overwhelmed. So.
Right. It's they're content mills.
Yeah.
And content
Yeah.
mills got a lot of grain in them, and they're not
Yeah.
sorted.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah,
is
for
like the doing it as a job aspect of it, of like
Yeah.
you just got to keep on doing it, keep on doing it. Now I mean I increasingly have the problem like where I'm wondering like do people have I look at these has anyone has anyone ever played a game that was not commercially spoon fed to them?
Yeah.
And
No, I think that's legitimately tough. There is very
Right.
much a like reinforcing mechanism there. I think that the big game is the big game because it's the big game.
right.
Yeah.
You know.
There's that
Uh,
that I've paraphrased it a million times on the show from divest from the video game industry.
oh yeah.
The
Yeah,
line-
that's also big for us actually. That
the,
thing,
the,
yeah.
the other half of analgesic
Yeah.
Marina. There's the line to the effect of it's great. We're so lucky that the most popular games are also the most well advertised ones, or
Yeah.
or something to that effect. Or all the best games
Yeah.
are conveniently the ones who also have the most advertising.
True.
Yeah.
And it's a thing you can observe culturally, like how much stuff, like without any advertising, how many AAA games will disappear within like 2 months,
Right.
When you-
Yeah. Well, I think there's also like there's so much that it's also kind of the manufactured outrage
Right.
element. Is
Yeah.
like
Phoenix, I have a very important question for you.
Okay.
When was the last time you thought about Pal World?
When I found out there was guns in a Pokemon-like game, which I was like,
Right.
But I was like, but other than that, I was like, yeah, I don't really want to go anywhere near that. But I don't know.
Oh, sorry. The game,
not anytime recently though.
the hype police are coming for me. Oh no. But like, what did that have? Like a million, 2 million concurrent players or something ridiculous? Like,
Yeah. What is
Yeah.
I kind of want to go on the Steam charts and see
right.
where that's
And
at
it
now,
could still have like 200,000 for all I know.
Yeah.
But it is a thing of like,
Oh, wow. Well, that's all time.
okay,
Oh, okay.
It's third all time apparently concurrent
Yikes.
players, but it's not in the top 10 right now.
right,
So,
right, and that's the thing about like how all this stuff works is like so much of it like fades away. Like how many best pictures, how many album of the year survive beyond their year or their decade,
right. Yeah. Totally.
And often it is like the works in the margins, the Etheranes of the world, if you will.
Yeah.
That, like
Yeah.
survive and get discovered and rediscovered over the years because their work is more singular and
Yeah.
and more like it speaks to people outside of community managers and PR and big billboards telling you to play the game. There's a reason people want to
Yep.
play them.
I feel like that kind of reminds me a bit of like another title that's similar to that I think will stand the test of time. And it happens, funny enough, it happens to be a game that I didn't jive with too well. Paradise Killer, where
Right.
it's very idiosyncratic. It's very, very much like pro frictional mechanics that sometimes like infuriate you, but like you're like, well, that's what they wanted. And also just story-wise as well too. Like it's such a unique. I don't know. It's just it's something where like even if you don't like it, you're gonna remember it after you played it, and you didn't play it because you heard about it somewhere in an ad. I think a lot of people. I know for me at least, I don't think it was because of reviews or anything. It was just sort of like a word of mouth thing that like I heard a lot of people.
Yeah, that game did really have strong word of mouth. Yeah.
For sure.
And it's not to rag on game critics too much again, but I figured I would check go back to my top 100 again and check. And would you believe that it does not have? People in the game dev space may have heard of a game before. It's a slightly older game called Yume Nikki.
Yeah, totally.
Not present. And like that is like probably one of the most influential games of all time, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no, literally it is for sure.
And it is like, but also it's like absent from like this critical space, in these weird ways. Like it's like game culture as like a blob. I feel you're starting to see it fracture more. And that is like the art side. You are positioned in a good time, I think, where the art side of games is like taking off more. I believe I feel it.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Like I've experienced anecdotally, like at events that it was just like I do much better with younger audiences. Because
that's interesting.
I think they just kind of my theory behind it is that they grew up with games having already existed as like a full medium, because they've been like games have been stagnant since like the PS3 era in terms of like technological improvements.
Yeah.
So not having lived through that of like, 5 years ago I was playing Super Mario Brothers, and now I'm playing Super Mario 64 or whatever.
Yeah, there's not as many leaps now.
Yeah.
And a lot of I find actually I think you brought this up in your piece for bullet points about Hellblade, is that there's a certain level of like graphical fidelity where it just starts to it's like it does itself sometimes, not always. Sometimes it does itself a disservice when it's trying to be hyper realistic, because you just start to notice wherever it isn't hyper realistic, because there's so many games trying to go for that type of.
Right, it's F14
like
grapes or whatever.
Yeah. That's to the grapes.
R.I.P. But yeah, you're right. Like it is like, and also like there's we're getting too long in the tooth. There's no time to talk about how basically that is killing development in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
I
mean, yeah. Well, and also the planet.
Yes, right. Yes.
Something that I think about often.
Yeah.
Right. Something I feel like I'm like, how did people forget that? Like, people really did a good job of hitting NFTs, but AI has the same computational problems, I think.
Oh yeah,
but people have just forgotten that side of it.
If not,
well, that's also the way more practical. Oh, I mean, there's multiple, I think, arguments that are more practical than like the copyright one.
Yes.
Or the theft issue, right? Like,
right.
You kind of got to get outside of that, I think. Yeah.
It has the same like server power drain or whatever for still functionally useless stuff.
Yeah.
That I think it's not going to. I mean, it's definitely not going to survive in the creative world. Like people are like already sick of it and will be increasingly sick of it as time goes on.
Yeah. Well, and it's just also so like because I reviewed Seeds of a Solar Empire 2 this month, which was mid in no large part because it has a bunch of AI art in it, and it is just like it's already like the most generic sci-fi video game setting imaginable, and like that does not make it better, you know. I just, because the developer statement about it was like, well, we can put more art in the game this way, and like, you know, and I was like, you know what game like doesn't, like something like the Banished Vault does not have a lot of art in it and looks so much better and is way more memorable, you know. Like, you don't need to do this. You don't have to do it.
How much do you benefit from more art, you know?
Yeah, literally. I don't, you know.
I was talking on a different show with unrelated about I forget the name of it now, even though like 80 million people play it or whatever. Some off-world mining thing or other. I forget what it's called, but it looks bad, I will say, in like quote unquote. It is the like developer art, but also, you know, like, so is like, I don't know if people have heard of this game called Slay the Spire.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that's like, that game does not look good, and yet
yes, like so some of the designs are fine, but like I'm not like, oh, this looks great, but you know, it is, we're still living in the Slay the Spire world, you know.
Yeah.
And that is right.
Yeah, it's cartoon. It looks like the same, which is great, which is very funny.
Yeah, because it turns out people like are attracted to play, you know.
Yeah.
And like the superficiality only goes like so far. And people will go back to like the grungiest looking stuff sometimes if it like plays nice or has interesting ideas or you know, engages them in some way.
Yeah.
The game that I inevitably bring up like every so often is Folklore in that regard. From was it PS2 now? I'm trying to remember now.
PS3.
PS3, right?
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna say it wouldn't be able to be done on PS2. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, it's not that it's ugly. It's actually quite beautiful, concept art wise. But I played it more for the fact that it was very experimental in its game design. Like, I always remembered that it was one of the few games that used the motion sense of the PS3 controller to do specific actions. And then on top of it, it was sort of a hybrid genre thing where it was part mystery visual novel, part action adventure game, and it never dragged at any point. So a lot of times too, it's like it was more just like the fact that the play was interesting and memorable for me, even if it was clunky at times. But you know, if it didn't have good gameplay, I probably would have been like, the concept art was pretty, but like I wouldn't remember very much about it.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I have a copy of Folklore lying around somewhere. It's something that exists in the back of my brain, and I'm looking at like, ooh, these are a lot of 7s out of 5s and 7s out of 10, which is like the sweet spot. I mean, we mentioned them up at the top, but FromSoft was the king of the 5 and 7 out of 10 for
literally,
for decades.
I think that's such a weird, like, watching like Souls games move from like niche is a little strong,
but like Echo Knight Beyond is
but like even Demon Souls, like, it was weird that GameSpot gave that Game of the Year. That was like a surprise to people. You know? And that's like literally one of the most prophetic decisions in games criticism. Right? Like, you know, but that shift of it being like this weird kind of, and like even Dark Souls, which, you know, sold pretty well, was like, you know, a couple million copies to start, right? Or whatever. Like, it was not, you know. And now it's like Elden Ring is like the biggest fucking thing in the world, right? Like, and that shift is so weird. Like, because I don't think it's really like, oh, they became better designers, and that's why the games are more successful, right? Like, it's really just coincidence, you know?
Yeah, as someone who played the majority of their back catalog, they're doing the same shit. They're just like, and it is weird to see it. Like, people, it rehabilitates Kingsfield, you know, now. People are like, oh,
it does,
People are like, Kingsfield is really cool, actually. You know, you've got like, you know, Dread Delusion and stuff citing Kingsfield as inspirations. And
and what's the other?
Yeah, the one that's more directly
Tower something tower.
Yeah, I know what you're talking.
I have this.
Oh, Shadow Tower.
Shadow Tower, yes.
Oh, I love Shadow Tower. Someone gave me a lot of time to talk about Shadow Tower, but the second one you get guns.
Oh, sick.
And it has like limb dismemberment. It's weird. Shadow Tower rules. I love.
Yeah, cool.
It's a very those games are cool. There's a fun mole that like hangs out. It's got like. So there's a guy. There's like a little poison hallway, and you go there, and this dwarf's like, come this way, and then you go there, and you go to the door, and it's locked. He's like, I don't know who you are. Get out of here. So you trudge through a poison swamp, find the dwarf. He's like, dude, bro, it's a joke. I'm sorry. And then
great.
And then you kill him and get a key.
Right.
While he runs away from you the whole time. They're like the weirdness was always there. Like there is a guy in Shadow Tower who does Patches style, like pulls out a bridge from underneath you.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
And like that exists in so many games.
I really need to go back, like, because I'm curious about Armored Core as well. Too. I didn't play the new one, but it's just it's kind of rare that I think a developer like that has this long a history and also has maintained such a distinct identity basically the whole way through.
Like
right,
like Nihon Falcom.
Yeah, I guess so. Right, there are people out there for sure. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, but
Gust.
It's definitely.
Is Gust the name I'm thinking of? Are they the Atelier ones?
Maybe.
Whoever develops Atelier.
Oh yes, it is Gust. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. How old is that? Like.
Atelier's like been around forever.
Yeah, 19. Literally, it's as old as me. It's like 3 weeks after I was born, the first Gust game came out.
Right, and now they're still making them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Blue Reflection. I forgot that was them.
Right, there is like these niche developers that like exist within these margins, you know.
Totally.
To bring it back to the tier manifesto, if you will.
Yes, for sure.
And I can't remember.
I wonder if maybe we could get away with covering like a Shadow Tower. That might be a fun.
That would be interesting, actually.
Because we've been kind of thinking about like because we haven't covered any like retro or older stuff yet,
right?
And I think we would like to, and I'm not sure what like our first salvo into that would be.
Yeah,
well, especially since we don't know how like I guess that's like a thing that we try to balance a lot too, is the reach that certain games have, because you go, okay, well, if we bring up a certain game and then people are like, but that's such a cult classic, like in a big way, like everyone, you know,
right?
Like then
but at
the same time,
could we do an issue of Tier on Yumi Nikki?
Yes, right.
Like I don't know, like is that right?
I think of this as like the in my brain I always think of this as like the airplane over the sea problem, you know.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, I
like,
think it's a similar thing.
Of like
sure.
Nobody knows about it, but everybody knows about it.
Yeah. And also, like, so much ink has been spilled on that album.
Yes, exactly. Right.
You know, like, it's like, what am I going to say that's going to be interesting about Yumi Nikki? Like, probably nothing.
Right.
You know?
It's my angle that I have a little bit of a toe in a wider, more mainstream audience that maybe isn't familiar. But, it's a thing I think about a lot of, like...
Yeah.
How can you, like... And it's the part of, like, the clumsiness of games culture, I guess. And
for sure.
And not having like the art space you can retreat to in the same way, and I think that's a lot of it is like just age, really.
Yeah,
and also games critics got a rough draw of things.
Yeah,
in the important time when they should have been building out that like cohesive art space.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Instead, they were like, "Oh no! What if you instead just wrote guides and previews? You know, forever."
Ugh.
But
and press releases and
yes,
stuff.
Yeah.
Right. What if you were like marketing, but not marketing, but basically marketing?
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
thing.
80% of the internet or 90% of the
Right. Right. It's a thing I come across. I mean, granted, I occupy a weird no man. I've realized I occupy a weird no man's land in between everything.
Yeah.
But I think
No, I mean, but I think that's what makes the stuff you do really valuable, you know. And even just being like, even there just being like a space where I can like, hey, here's a bunch of weird shit that I can go check out,
right.
you know.
It's so
Like,
valuable.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
huge.
well, thank you. I try to avoid getting compliments on this show because it's embarrassing.
Well, too bad,
Yes,
sucker.
but I do
Gotcha.
like. It's a thing I think about. Like, I think it's important for there to be like a space that can be like a stranger's like, yes, your thing is good. I'm going to pay you money.
Yeah,
And you know that's lacking on both the game's creation and criticism side. You know,
for sure.
of like, no, the thing I've been thinking about is like, I want people. Like, I don't want people to change their works to be more marketable. I want them to be exactly what they're making, but also make money doing it.
Yeah. No, I think that's something that we want to do as well for our. We want to give people like obviously we'll edit it, and it's.
Yes.
I think it's good to have someone who's going to look at your
Yes.
work, right?
Right.
But like we do want to. Hey, you can try. You could write something that is not crit, and
Yeah.
we will. You know, we can roll with that. Like if there's something you really want to experiment with, like we're here for you doing that.
Right.
You know.
You're more editing like the copy, not the content. You know.
Yeah.
Like you're not saying, oh no, turn this into SEO, SEO optimizing essay.
Yeah. Listen.
It's not marketing.
Right. It's not right because it's the thing I've bemoaned sometimes of seeing like we started our own independent press and it's like, oh, you're just making content mill, you know, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's like, well, why even bother? I guess because you want to have food.
I guess, yeah. But
Which
no,
is-
it is frustrating. Well, and also just the way that I think the frustration I've had with some of those projects is just that like, you know, they're not commissioning new people
Yes,
to
right.
write for them,
Yeah.
right? Like it can make money for like 3 to 5 people that are on staff, and then it's not like there's no room for someone new to kind of take up space there, or they're not commissioning them is the other
Right,
I think
and that's
other
the thing
side of it.
I think about sometimes when people talk about, you know, game press brain drain. It's like, well, pay people with the brains. It's like,
Yeah.
if like it's happening. A lot of it is because like your people, and it is like sensibly playing it safe. But when you like circle around to like the same 3 to 5 people, of course, new people. If you don't pay new people go away.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you don't encourage new people, then people just like vanish. I think about that constantly when there's like, I'll get a submission that like I'm like, oh my god, where did this come from? It has like the person has 0 social media presence. They have
Right.
the game has like no reviews. I'm like, where would this go otherwise? You know. And that kind of stuff like happens everywhere. I think, you know, how many blogs are like live and die before people even saw them, and they're like, you know, the next generation of games crits, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was definitely one of those blogs that just
Right.
kind of just died.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was like, I mean, it helped me. It helped me like find my voice as a writer and stuff like that. But back then, it did kind of feel a bit like, well, I don't really know how to break into that.
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah.
that, you know, yes, there was some sites that were taking pitches, but at one point, it felt like it was just sort of similar to how people talk about how to get into game design, where they go, I don't know, we can't tell you which one is the guaranteed way, but I just kind of fell into it one day, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Well,
so
it is a lot of it is luck.
Yeah.
Like even like I have not, you know, I wouldn't even say I made it because like I had a full-time job for 5 brief months before before I left because it was terrible.
Yes.
So you know, it's not. I didn't, you know, but I do think that like even my corner of it is just like, yeah, like in 2020, like I was in the right place at the right time and like
Yes.
got a Vice, you know, got a Waypoint article and a couple other things, and then that was what like got me a job eventually, you know, or like a space in freelance stuff, and also like a lot of other people are like way better at it than I am. Like I'm not very good at pitching.
Right, that's a whole other like skill of like marketing yourself is
yeah.
And that's actually something that I had a bit of an advantage with because of a friend who was good at doing it. I think that's another thing too that is important with like this type of space with freelance writing is that I don't know. It sounds like such a cliche to say like it's who you know, because it's not really like that. It's like it can be that sometimes, but like Grace said, sometimes it still does come down to luck and, you know, like building up that skill and I found for me too, it was also not who you know in terms of like networking in that traditional sense, but more like organically just, you know, having, you know, like relationships with people that were like-minded, and over time having, you know, certain people, like there was the person who taught me to pitch is somebody who isn't in video games criticism at all. Like they do Canadian art criticism.
Right.
They do international art too, but like that was their niche, and they were just saying, you know, they happen to be really gifted at pitching, and they were like, oh, I can give you some pointers on that and that kind of thing. But that and the having a community of like-minded people is a really big deal. I mean, part of the reason why I know Grace is because we were both Goodreads friends for a while.
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot that's the first place we met. That's so wild.
And it was weird because I remembered it in way in hindsight. Like it was one of those things where
well, because I left Goodreads like a few months after. Like I haven't updated my Goodreads in years at this point. So like, although the thing is, there's no good book websites, and I'm really mad about this.
Yeah, like I think Storygraph is like the most possibly comparable, but it's still not really what I'm looking for. Yeah.
No, it really isn't. Yeah. Well, so many of them are so focused on like here is how our algorithm works to recommend you books, and I'm like, I don't need new books to read. I don't need like, my backlog is huge. You're right. Like I don't need you to recommend me stuff. I have plenty of stuff to read.
Yeah. Like, you know how long they've been writing books. There's plenty of books.
There's lots of them. Yeah. Well, I'm also not the kind of person where like, well, I really like enemies to lovers. And I really want more of this trope or whatever. Like I'm cool.
Oh, sorry. Is there a button that says, no, I'm cool though. I'm
good. Yeah. I'm good. I'm gonna like read, I don't know.
I engage with art, not a series of tropes packaged.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've also just always known the kinds of books I like. So it's one of those things where whenever they're like, "You're reading this, try this pizza cookbook," I'm like, "No,
right?
No, it's okay. I know what I need." No,
so yeah,
what about
part of it
thriller?
is that Goodreads will like expose you to like the most horrible dregs of humanity.
That too. Yeah.
That it's like you'll read. Like have you both read Never Let Me Go, the Ishiguro novel?
Yes.
No.
It's good. I mean, you could read that. It's good. But it's about. I mean, I'm kind of spoiling it, but it's about like people who are cloned to like provide organs, like organ transplants for people. Mm-hmm. And it's not really revealed at first in the novel. They're like at a private school and kind of like sad and morose, and then it becomes like clearer like what is happening over time. And then like one of the reviews on Goodreads was like, why don't they just like have a revolution and stop doing that? Why don't they just stop giving the like? If I had to give up my organ to someone else, I wouldn't do it.
The world of people. The world of people who's engaging with art is like, what if people make good decisions only?
Yes, literally. It's so funny.
It's a whole entirely different.
Also, it's like, there are like 20 of these. Like, it's not like there's thousands of these people who are like it's like I don't know exactly. I don't remember exactly how it works, but it's not like a huge underclass. It's like
I think it's
you
like
know,
under 20.
yeah, it's not that many,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Anyway, it's
No, I
but yeah,
just-
really cool novel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good book, but like, yeah, just super, just like
I
It's
you-
definitely worse for
you,
the
you gave me a brief flashbacks to like I think this happened around the time of speaking of another game that when I looked it up and I go, that's what that is, Boyfriend Dungeon.
oh yeah,
And
Love Boyfriend Dungeon.
there's a time around that also when people were like very upset at voice actors and actors for playing bad people.
yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember that.
And I
Whoa.
was like,
No.
it gets me. It's like it reminds me like, oh, there are people who just like look at art in a way that I never will, and
That's true.
Yeah.
I simply do
Well, I
not have
think
to
that
worry
is
about
like,
them.
I mean, sometimes I don't know. It's something's tough, but there's a lot of like barely sort of like with the veil of like social justice language, just
Yes.
pearl
Yeah.
clutching that happens. Like
Oh,
you're like, oh, this game is about sex and violence. Like, oh dear.
I tend to be
Clutch
maybe
pearls.
overly suspicious whenever people use any kind of like more measured language and like more like feels more jargony sorts of language
Right. Yeah.
because it feels less sincere to me.
That's
yeah.
true.
'Cause
Yeah.
it feels like a collection of the right words they should be saying.
Oh yeah, I think it's tough that I feel like our culture is. I don't know. I'm making big, broad statements
Right,
here,
yes.
but like I'm in a book club here in Chicago where I read a lot of stuff by like queer folks, and most of it's recent,
Yeah.
and it's so full of like slogans and kind of people turning to the camera and like saying like the politics of the book out loud,
Yes.
which like. I think sometimes, listen, I love Soviet propaganda. Sometimes I love when people turn to the camera and say the politics out loud, but also it's like, I just want there to be like a politics that's kind of beyond like that. I'm not just supposed to read the book and nod along with and be like, yes, like I agree.
I'm
I want there to be a provocation or even an assumption that I'm not necessarily on the level. Right, and
Yeah.
like trying to
But
not necessarily trying to appeal to me, but just being like I have to build something out beyond,
Right.
Or
you don't need to explain to you.
yes, yeah. Well, I think there's sometimes the thing of like, I mean, I think this is it can happen in literature of like any marginalization, but like
Yeah.
that you're speaking to the oppressor, basically.
Right.
You're
Yes,
speaking
yeah.
to like you're trying to get people to understand like an experience, and I think that is like
Right. And
a fundamentally misguided way of approaching this, but that's
but also
That's just
sometimes it's like, oh, right, this is for somebody else. This is not for me.
yes, literally, yeah. But I think sometimes that like I think so much of the universal comes out of the specific, and like I guess I kind of feel like if Joyce can like have untranslated German and Italian and Latin in his book, like hey, put some untranslated Arabic in there. Like, make me work for it, like make me do this. And like, that is interesting. Right. Or whatever,
You
like,
can kind of, you can do anything as it turns out.
Yeah. But that's also like a problem with, I'm sure, like book publishing and editing and stuff that like, if you're a young writer who's, not white, like who are they going to let you do like experimental shit or like
they're like, we're already publishing your book.
Yeah, exactly.
Calm down there,
like,
buddy.
That stuff is really
Right.
rough. So it's not, and also that's also part of like the thing is that like a lot of literature right now is like selling your marginalization, selling your trauma,
Yes.
right, and like using, and that is really, there's just like a billion dynamics that make this like super difficult for any individual writer. So I'm like really not trying to get anybody's case, but it's like
it's a thing I think about constantly. Like I could probably get sales if I trotted out the rainbow capitalism every June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
There's it is intentionally. I have a big map that shows all the people. It's intentionally like not trying to be a bunch of white guys, but it feels also very awkward and like I want to advertise people's work. Not like look at this.
Yeah.
like here's like look at this marginalized group of developers or whatever. It feels like, well,
Yeah.
I'm selling them and not their work, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a little weird to say out loud, but I think
Yes.
something with tier, like we hope that the people we pick and the kind of crypt we do like speaks for itself
Right, exactly.
to some degree.
Right.
You know, and then like, hey, like it, and like hopefully like I keep getting on Pinterest, I keep getting advertisements for a shirt that's like I am a safe space.
Right,
and it's
right.
like if you have to wear that, like, you know, it's very like my question, you know, people keep asking me questions about my murder t-shirt that are answered by my t-shirt.
Yes, right.
Like I am a safe space. I would immediately begin to be like, I bet you're not a safe space.
Right.
Like
Really normal and definitely not.
Right.
Right.
If tier
You know?
put on your masthead or whatever, we're like right on your, not your masthead, your banner is like, we hire and support marginalized writers. I'm like, why do they need to say that?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like you're already doing it without having to, like, I guess there's the benefit of like, oh, people know, but I guess it's like, then it is people very much engaging with the surface level again.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
And you're just like, it's like, then are people engaging with your work, or are people
right? Well, I think also part of it is, I also don't really want to say like, hey, like it's like it's good to work here, because like if it isn't, I want to know that,
Right.
and I don't want it to make that part of my posture.
Yes.
To be like, oh, we're a safe space. Like if we're not, then like I want to be able to someone to come up and be like, hey, like
hold us accountable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I don't want it to be like, but it's part of our brand.
our brand, your brand identity.
Like right,
and then there's the right. It's a tricky thing to work about, and then because then you are like, people are like, oh, I want to write for Tier, but I didn't ask to have my identity be part of Tier's marketing, you know?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Well, right, and I just think I want people, like, obviously, I want people to feel comfortable and like ready, and like, you know, Phoenix has done this a little bit with some of the stuff she's written for the site, like, you know, talking about like, hey, this is the perspective I'm coming out of, and like this is how that shapes me, and like obviously that's welcome, but I do think it is also like, I don't want you to feel like, hey, you have to
like you have to say something now about
well, also I think also I would really, something I sometimes feel is that like people should wait to I think a good, this is like a not exactly like a full rule of thumb, but like a good measure, if like you're ready to write like a personal essay about something that happened to you, especially something traumatic, is if you can find it funny or absurd in some way, right? That there's something kind of like, and that also doesn't take away, like I really, this is like a weird plug, but I really loved I'm Glad My Mom Died, the Jeanette McCurdy celebrity memoir.
I keep hearing that's a really good one.
It's actually very good, and part of it is that it is part of it is that it's just very, very funny, awesome. And like, and the thing is, it is more devastating because of like how, like, it's so, the things that like her mom does are so ridiculous and absurd and comical, but are also like so bleak and sad, right? And like that tonal thing is like actually super rich and complicated and brings out, and then when the book kind of becomes a little more self-reflective and sad, like it has a lot of punch, because part of it is about like being a kid and like this stuff happening around you and you being like, well, this is like what life is like this is what, like this is normal, and then you're like 25 and you're like, wait, holy shit.
Oh god.
Right.
That was not normal.
Well,
I think if you have enough distance from it. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say, I think it shows that you have enough distance from it now that you can look at it, under a lens without it being like, and
without it being
this is
like
messing me up further or
experience for you, which is, it's tough, and that's not like a hard and fast rule, I think, but like,
I feel like that statement can be like, it exists for a certain pocket of the internet. Like, this is not a hard and fast rule. Like, of course it isn't. I know it isn't. Everyone knows that isn't.
Well, no, I mean, it's not even just internet stuff, but I definitely do like assume that everyone I'm talking to is going to like think the take the most ungenerous version of my argument,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And be like back at me, and I'm like, oh well, but like I didn't mean that, and like but then it doesn't usually happen. People are usually nice to me.
Right. People
Yeah.
So
are like, the people who you imagine hate you probably do not, except
yeah.
and
Except when they do, that's a real motherfucker. But
right, yes.
Oh god.
I
Sometimes they telegraph that they hate you in advance, and then you're like, oh, you know what? I'm glad you did that because now I can avoid you.
Now I could just be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. I was like, I thought for a while somebody did dislike me. Like, oh, then I started like, oh no, they probably don't dislike me at all.
Yeah.
No, that's
Literally,
usually more
yeah.
more
You
often
get-
the case.
You just often get
Where
your own head about it.
For sure. Yeah.
But speaking
Yes, go.
speaking of
Oh,
people
yeah.
being in heads, you're in your heads right now as you listen to us. But we're gonna get out of that soon because Phoenix Grace, we've been going for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna try getting to wrap this up, but that's why I said, at an hour mark, I started mentioning, oh, we should wrap this up, and then we go for another hour, because really, this thing could just go on forever.
Yeah.
It's what I like about this. I like, it's why I call it a post-con hangout show, because it is very much like those overly long conversations you have when you realize no one has anywhere to go, really.
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, it's Saturday afternoon.
Right,
You know?
exactly.
Yes.
Like, but it's like it's great having you both here. Great to have you back on the show. It's a joy to do this show and to hang. Like I miss my week off. I guess I was out traveling at a convention, so I didn't miss it that much because there were still people I was hanging out with and meeting. But that is hard. Like, going to New York is expensive.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's why the show exists, so that I can hang out with people and chat with people. And now you have been guests on the show, but I will like any true radio host, podcast guest, a lot of stuff just escapes my brain. So I will ask a very important question of both of you.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite Toho character?
I really wish I had an answer to this time. I'm really upset.
You've been given time to prepare.
I know, literally I was. Literally I was given time to prepare, and I still don't know anything about Toho.
I was like, I think I said Remelia Scarlet last time.
Okay, that sounds right.
I think so, yeah, and I think it was because she was like kind of gothic and stuff like that.
She has
But-
dual
Yeah.
wings.
Yes, she has the jewel wings and stuff like that. I kind of feel like just looking at like the wiki page, just like right now.
Oh no, Remelia
That-
Scarlet. Sorry, I mistake. Remelia has the bat wings.
Oh, yeah,
that's
yes.
my kind of gal. I should look this
yeah.
up.
It's I'm personally a fan of the whole Scarlet Devil Mansion. They're all pretty cool. They got a cool vibe going on.
Mhm.
I think I'm gonna say it's Koishi Komeiji this time.
Okay, I was thinking of Flandre. Flandre has the jewel wings.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
But they're both Scarlets.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna listen. I'm not gonna. This is tune in January for Toho 101. During the pledge drive, when all the people I've asked over these years, what's your favorite Toho character? They can finally learn what is Toho. What is a Danmaku? It's a bullet hell. Why are all these Toho games? Why can't you just release a Toho game on the internet and have people pay money for it, even though you do not own Toho? Why does Zoot seem like he's always having a good time, and why is his beer glasses increasingly large in all these pictures?
Mm-hmm.
But that's we're wrapping up. We're ending up the show. We've mentioned it a lot. But do you have anything to promote on the show besides the imaginary review engine?
Yeah. So I also do a podcast called The Safe Room.
Yes.
Which is a survival horror not actual play,
Right.
Game Club podcast.
Yeah.
So we cover a game a month. I'm recording the episode on Dead Space in 2 days, or on Monday.
Ooh.
So that'll be fun. And then we're covering Crow. It's Crow Country, right? Or is it Crow County?
I think it's county.
Okay, Crow County. That's what we're doing.
That sounds right to me.
In September. And yeah, I really like doing that show. We took a little bit of a hiatus.
Grace
over
will
the
let you
summer
astray.
just
It
'cause-
was country.
Oh shit! All right, okay. It's country,
Sorry.
Crow Country.
Yeah.
I really love doing that show, and I think it's also cool. Part of the project is like we try to cover stuff that's new and old, you know.
Right.
And so I think we have like a really robust like set of stuff that we've approached over the years. Like we did all the Team Silent Hill games. We did a bunch of like the first 3 Fatal Frames. And then I've also covered like some kind of smaller stuff. Anyway, I really like doing that show.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of it. I'm also abroad on the internet. If you like type in Grace Machine on Twitter and on Blue Sky and on co-host, you'll probably find me.
Perfect.
And then I write reviews and do other stuff on the internet. But that's basically it for me.
I'm gonna do the influencer thing,
Yes.
even though I'm not an influencer, and say I am Phoenix Sims on most things. I find me at that name practically everywhere. I'm not as active on Twitter, and I don't know. I guess I'll just say I do mostly writing for Unwinnable. My column is called Interlinked, and I look at video games as part of the broader ecosystem of like both physical media and digital media, and a bunch of other stuff that takes my fancy. But also, I am a contributing writer to Paste, and I have a new piece coming out soon. Should be this week. And I have a personal game project that I've been working on for years, called The Wraith, which is basically a game about being in a eldritch horror kind of setting. You're interrogating your sister, and you don't. But that one's just kind of been like a personal project.
Right.
So it's not out yet. I don't know when it would be out, but it's just sort of like a way for me to do something involving some of my characters that I've wanted to explore more, creative writing wise, that also explore stuff like eco-gothic and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, so that's basically me. I've done some stuff for Into the Spine before.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. I'm just kind of just writing a lot.
All over the place. And
all over the place.
And I will say for listeners, you've got good. If you just search Imaginary Review Engine, you've got Engine Review. I've put it in reverse. You've got good SEO, it seems. But also that's imaginaryenginereview.ghost.io is the actual website.
Yeah. I really want to get some more. Maybe we have a little money banked up. Maybe we could spend some of that on alternate
.com
URLs. Yeah, on a .com,
Yeah.
even on tierreview.com. Maybe.
.com, yeah.
Tier-
I'm sure we could do that.
Subscribe to
we'll figure it
Tier so they can just keep buying more URLs. Like any good video game website full of vanity URLs.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you know. That's how you'll know you've made it.
Yeah, we'll do the IER.com.
Yeah.
imaginaryer.com. etc.
But yes, I will say, if you're here, I guess you know what I do. Probably Indiepocalypse. It's the monthly anthology that comes out every now and then. And by every now and then, I mean every first Friday of the month. There's one coming out in less than a week. As of this speaking to you right now, you can get it there. It's got Patreon. It's got a tape club. just put out new stuff in there if you want to get games physically. Tape clubs and tape markets, and all that stuff is basically just indiepocalypse.com/what you think it is, like /Patreon/tape/submit/ whatever, you know? It all gets you there. Gets you where you need to go. But Phoenix Grace, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
A true pleasure to have you on the show, and a pleasure to do the show with you. You out there, from one tier subscriber to another, hey, just hop on board. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Or not to another, but to a potential another, I should say.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you like the things that you see, giving people money to do those things helps them continue to do them.
That's so true.
Even if it's like,
You know, if you got it.
right. Of course, not.
Yeah.
Don't bankrupt yourself for games writing or anything.
Yeah.
It's Maslow's hierarchy you need, right? It's shelter, food, Patreons.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Then at the top is self-actualization.
Yeah.
But did anyone do that? I bet I could go viral with that. Actually, what if 2025 I just tried to go viral all the time? Just
I wouldn't recommend it, but
the most
it's up to
empty
you.
posting in the world.
Very wild 2025.
Yeah, I just started quote retweeting people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I became one of those guys.
Oh no.
No. Shout out to those guys, I guess. One of those, I could start reposting my own stuff constantly, just to make sure people saw it. And not promotional posts, just the regular posts that I make. Anyway, we're gonna leave the show now before I start getting too punchy. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.